All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for being with us. Welcome to the joint listening session. We have background music with my little one, so bear with me, it is summertime. Welcome to the joint listening session of the Client and Family Leadership Committee and the Cultural Linguistic Competency Committee. My name is Myra Alvarez. My pronouns are she, her, and ella, and I have the honor of serving as chair of the Commission for Behavioral Health and have served as chair of the Cultural Linguistic Competency Committee for the past couple of years. I want to begin by thanking each of you for being here with us, for giving of your time, of your commitment, and your willingness to participate today in this important advisory capacity. We've said it all the time, but it's worth repeating that this conversation, your insights, your engagement are key in making sure that the work we move forward as a commission is reflective of the communities we seek to serve. So really appreciate your partnership in making that possible for us. I also want to acknowledge that this is a hard time in California and in our country for anyone that believes in the ideals of who the United States is, and especially for people of color, for immigrant communities, for trans communities, for low-income families. It is a hard time, and I want to recognize that we're having this conversation. Oh my God! Oh, sorry, my little girl was choking. She's okay.
No worries.
She's okay.
Okay.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
It is a hard time, y'all.
It is a hard time. We're all multitasking. We got
Yes,
you.
we are. We are showing up
got
as
you,
our
babe.
whole selves in this
Well, me
space.
too.
So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Chambers.
Yes, thank you, Chair Alvarez. And good afternoon. Just as the chair, we're on the go. I'm on the go, but we're here. She's noted, my name is Rachel Chambers, and I'm so honored to be here today in the capacity as both the commissioner and the chair of the Client and Family Leadership Committee. During our conversation today, Commissioner Chair and I both want to encourage an open dialogue about the future of these two committees based on our past accomplishments and what we can envision for the future. Hold on one second. Essentially, we want to be able to give you all a voice to be able to make decisions and bring to your attention all the decisions that we would like for you guys to put input in. So with that, I want to thank you all for joining, and I want to turn it back over to our amazing, strong chair of the commission and chair of the client of the cultural and linguistic community, Chair Alvarez.
Thank you, Commissioner Chambers, and thank you for your partnership in all things, not only related to the commission, but in life. So thank you. So a couple of things just to bring everyone up to speed on where the commission is. As many of you know, for those of you that are followers and important community members of the commission, you know a little bit more of this information than others that may be newer to this space or haven't been as connected to this space. So if it's repetitive, forgive me, but we do want to make sure we're level setting with some information. Our two committees have not convened since 2024. And since that time, there have been some significant changes at the commission. We are now larger. We have 26 commissioners. As was stated earlier, I'm the new chair of the commission. Actually, not new. It's now been almost 7 months, right? Commissioner Rolette is serving as vice chair, and we've had leadership transition. Will Lightbourne, who served as our interim executive director, has transitioned out, and we've welcomed our new permanent executive director, Brenda Graylish. So thank you so much for being with us. In addition, we've established 3 new advisory committees of the commission. Those are the Program Committee, the Legislative and External Affairs Committee, and the Budget and Fiscal Review Committee. And then while these two committees, the Client and Family Leadership Committee and the Cultural Linguistic Competency Committee haven't met, they certainly have not been forgotten. We are having this conversation to intentionally and assure us, you and our entire commission, of the commitment of incorporating community voice and perspective into the work that we're doing. So as we build out the new structure, as we try new approaches to creating spaces for discussion and feedback, we recognize the critical contributions that these committees and you as community members can provide. And that's why we're here today, to hear from you and to explore how we can best integrate these committees into that broader vision moving forward. We heard loud and clear about the need for greater transparency, to show up together, to create open communication and dialogue with the public, with members of the public, and with our commission. So that's something that we want to utilize these times for. So before we dive into that, I'd like to begin. Dame un momentito, chiquita, y luego vamos a bailar y cantar, okay? Un momentito. Before we dive in, we're gonna start with a short icebreaker. Again, I think we're only as powerful as the commitment to community that we create amongst ourselves, and that often starts with getting to know each other a little bit better. So this community builder. So I'm going to invite a few people to briefly share either out loud or in the chat what brought you to this work. Why are you showing up here today? And feel free. I think you can unmute yourself. I'm looking at the team. Yes.
They can't, but if we can, I can unmute them if they just raise their hand.
Oh, great. Okay. If you could raise your hand, we'd love for you to share out loud, or if you don't feel comfortable sharing out loud, that's completely fine. Please drop it in the chat. What brought you to this work? Very curious. I'm happy to start. Again, I'm Mayra Alvarez. There's a saying in Spanish that is "La ropa sucia se lava en casa," which means you wash your dirty clothes at home. That you don't talk a lot about, things that are going on. And that's how I was raised. So recognizing how mental health has impacted, mental illness and mental well-being has impacted my family. I want to break that, right? Things run through you until they don't, right? So I'm very intentional about trying to show up and do better. When you know better, you do better. So trying to do that. And part of it is the commitment as advocates and as public servants. So I'll hand it over to my co-chair of this conversation to share what brings you to this work.
Yes, and what brings me to this work, thank you, Commissioner Alvarez. And what brings me to this work is my ancestors and the commitment of us, coming to this country as, farmers, as workers, and my commitment to justice, social justice, and commitment to planting seeds that I'll never be able to sit under the shade of trees for. So that's really my commitment, to plant all the trees that I'll never be able to sit under the shades, but my children, other people's children, Mayra Alvarez's daughter will sit under those trees. That's why I'm here. And I'll go to the next. I'm gonna go off camera for like 1 second.
And our chat function is not currently working, so we're trying to get something in place of that, but we still can, if anyone wants to raise their hand to shout out loud in the meantime.
And
Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Am I on? I don't know.
Yep, we can hear you, Teresa.
Oh, sorry, I'm driving. My husband has the phone. This is Teresa Comstock with California Association of Local Behavioral Health Boards and Commissions. And I'm here because I'm representing 59 local boards and commissions. And one of their big responsibilities is to ensure that the community reflects the diversity of the clients that are served by the behavioral health system, and also that the behavioral health agencies are listening to all of the different stakeholder groups. So I think it's so important that the boards and commissions are involved in ensuring that the community is involved in the BHSA planning.
Thank you, Teresa. Next, Richard.
Hi, good afternoon. Richard Zaldivar, I'm the Executive Director of the Wallace Memorias and have been a member of the Cultural and Linguistic Committee. I'm here, my story, similar to a description, cultural description that Mayra shared. I was taught in the Hispanic community Don't raise your voice too loud because the neighbors may hear. And early on, it taught me to keep secrets. And I lived with secrets most of my life until I bottomed out from alcoholism 36 years ago and came out of the closet. And when I was losing friends to AIDS, because for similar stories, I decided to build an AIDS monument to people who died from AIDS and also to provide services in my community. And later on, I realized, went through bouts of depression, but also had to deal in later life with anxiety disorder. So I know too well the mental health complications that plague our community. And that's why I'm dedicated in the rest of my life to this cause. So thank you allowing me to share.
Next we have Richard as well. There you go. It doesn't look like we're able to hear you, Richard. It shows that you're unmuted, but there is no sound coming through. Okay, let's come back to you. Let's see if this works, Jason.
Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, we can hear you. Okay.
All right. Hi, my name's Jason Robison. I'm a person with lived experience. I'm a family member. And I'm here because my journey of recovery has shown me that recovery is possible for everybody and that everybody is able to define their own recovery. And because community is the thing that's essential for recovery, Surgeon General Vivek Murthy's parting prescription for America is community, and peer services and family support services are the things in our system that connect people to community supports. And I'm passionate about making sure that our system is able to scale those kinds of interventions. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Richard, let's try again to see if your audio is working.
Can you?
Hello?
Now Richard is muted, so
Yeah, hold on one
we
second.
unmute him?
Richard, it looks like you're muted again. Go ahead.
there you
Okay,
go.
you're unmuted.
Am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
We can hear
Yeah,
you.
there we go. Now we can.
Okay, thank heaven. Thank heaven. Yes, I'm Richard number 2, so I'm basically here to back up Richard number 1. We've got to stick together these days. So I'm Richard Krzyzanowski. I'm from the Southern California area. I'm a person with lived experience. I'm also the president of CAMFRA, the California Association of Mental Health Patients' Rights Advocates. And I'm a longtime member of the Client Family Leadership Committee. And my reasons, like many of ours, are very personal. One of them were at a time where I think any of us who are fighting in many different ways for rights, our own and the rights of others, this is the time, no matter which front we're occupied in, to be active in that. Plus, we made a reference earlier to the times we live in, Myra. And, you know, I live in immigrant communities. My family was not just immigrants, but they were political refugees. And the fear amongst my neighbors and the communities I live in is palpable. It's crushing so many spirits and making so many conversations not possible or feeling unsafe. So I'm going to fight for rights, and I'm going to use my voice wherever I can and wherever I think it might have some impact. And that includes speaking out in concert with all of you. So thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Next, we'll have Sharon. Go ahead.
Unmute. Okay. Hello. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Sharon Yates, and I've been on the Client Family Leadership Committee since 2014. I'm a pretty strong advocate for youth and teens, and I've become state certified as a peer support specialist for that age group. As a matter of fact, I took the class at Painted Brain, and I'm so grateful to all that I learned from Rachel and her staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Is there anyone else who'd like to share? Okay, maybe not. I think that's it.
Wonderful.
Oh, actually,
Mel.
Melvin.
Oh, hi. My name is Mel Mason, and I am co-founder of the Village Project Inc. in Seaside, and I'm theoretically retired, but I still I'm going to always be involved, and I'm here because I want to be a part of the collective voice, especially the collective voice of people from our historically unserved, underserved, and inappropriately served community. That we know we're in a struggle. We just won a big one the other day, and in terms of not allowing the governor to take away, the last year of our, of our CDEPs, and to continue the struggle to make sure that that we have a voice, and that equity and justice, remain at the forefront and at the root of everything that we do from this point forward, and to make sure that I'm a part of the continued longevity of the CRDP, even if it doesn't have the same name anymore. What we were about, must never die. And so I'm here just as a part of continuing to be a part of that process.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, everybody. I think many of the comments that you all said resonate with folks for similar reasons. And thank you for sharing and making a space where people feel comfortable and sharing their stories. We all have stories that bring us to this work. Laurel, I see your hand is up. Oh, wait, does Laurel have to be unmuted? I'm so sorry. Oh, no, she's there.
Yeah, yeah. I was allowed to unmute. Thank you. I'm Laurel Ben Hamida, and some of you know me, but I'll say a little bit more about myself for those of you that are new. I've been in the refugee immigrant mental health space, working one way or another for about 40 years. And my focus has been representing refugee and immigrant communities at the table, the policy tables. I come with lived experience with depression and anxiety, and am a member of families that have had significant
Oh, did we lose Laurel?
It looks like we lost two people at the same time. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, and her option for audio is gone, so it looks like it might have been on her end something happened. Oh, there she goes. Hold on, it looks like 1 second. She might be back.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay.
I'm back. Okay, I think I left where it said I had lived experience with depression and anxiety, and I'm the member of families that have had significant experience with migration and colonial trauma, both North African and South Asian. And I've been representing Muslim American Society Social Services Foundation at the OAC, the BHC, in this kind of space and others for about 10, 15 years now. And I am a former member of the CLCC. and resigned at one point because really out of frustration. But that was a long time ago, and some very good things have been happening later. So thank you.
Thanks, Floral. That's a good segue to the next agenda item, which really is laying out like the purpose and outcomes of our conversation today, because both Commissioner Chambers and I recognize this is 2 hours of a conversation that could be years in really thinking through what this looks like for all of us as we show up. And I also just want to acknowledge, I see some commissioners in the room, so thank you for being with us in the virtual room. I see Commissioner Larson, Commissioner Callan. Thank you for being here with us. Always appreciate having more of our commissioners participate in these conversations. It looks beautiful, chiquita hermosa. I love that sign. Thanks, y'all. Appreciate the patience.
Yeah.
So let's talk about purpose and outcomes. Again, level setting expectations for these couple of hours that we are together. So as I mentioned earlier, the commission has been evolving in structure, and obviously so has the behavioral health landscape in which we're operating under with the implementation of Prop 1, but also other various state initiatives. Just to recap, Prop 1 really refocuses on the BHSA priority population to address the needs of those with the highest behavioral health needs, those with serious mental illnesses or severe substance use disorder, and then also expands to include substance use disorder as a standalone need. That's like, the technical changes that moved forward that I'm sharing. But what I also want to share is that in moving forward those changes, there were impacts to the operations of the commission itself. But one thing that did not change was our commitment to ensuring that we're better integrating community voice and input. So the purpose of today's meeting really is to reflect on the work we've done thus far as committees, as the CFLC, as the CLCC, but more important, to think about the future, to think about what do we want that work to look like in this new advisory structure that we're operating under. And I want to be clear, it is a new advisory structure. So we are learning as we move forward, and we are assessing the impact and opportunities in front of us to course correct as we move forward. And we said that when we launched the advisory or the committees, but want to be explicit about that, because part of evolving and learning and growing is leaving room for mistakes, leaving room for growth and change. So I want to say that out loud. So today we want to really think about what has worked, what's been challenging, what frustrated you, Laurel, and many others, right, in the work that we had been doing together, and how do we make that different in this structure moving forward, whether it be as the CFLC and CLCC, whether it be as another committee structure, but what does that actually look like? And then mamita, necesito que tengas un poquito más calladita, por favor, chiquita. And then the insights that we share today are going to directly influence our work and how we work together with the public moving forward. How do we operate moving forward? So this to us means there's concrete understanding, shared understanding of how we lift up lived experience, how we advise, how these committees, how the public advises the commission on equity and access, how we collaborate with new advisory committees, and then how we ensure that the behavioral health system in our state really reflects the needs and strengths of the communities it seeks to serve. So again, if we think about, the outcomes that we want to get, what we want you all to walk away with, one, we want to make sure people feel heard in today's conversation and that you have opportunities to feel heard. Two, we want to identify opportunities, those concrete opportunities for input moving forward. And then three, we want to walk away with a plan for incorporating that moving forward, so that when we come back to you all, we have ideas around what that structure looks like. That this conversation is going to directly shape the roadmap for relaunching what this commitment to community engagement looks like for the commission. Clearer roles, regularly scheduled meetings, a structure that supports that meaningful engagement, meaningful impact across the system. So that's a little bit about purpose and outcomes for the time we have today. I want to pause there before I transition over to Commissioner Chambers. to open it up for any like questions that come up around that so that we can be prepared for that as we engage in the conversation.
And just to support you before we get to the next agenda item, I think some other things that the Commissioner Alvarez was like having us think on is like the questions like, should we merge? Should we remain two entities, right? And you said that, but like us really reflecting on like what is our purpose, and the structure we're committing as Chair Alvarez has noted to structured meetings, agendas. But I think there's power in numbers, right? So how do we leverage our work, as Commissioner Alvarez said, but really have an impact along with the other committees? Because if we don't have the cultural and linguistically appropriate folks at the table and our client and family folks like overseeing or leading or an adjacent to, then it, we're not doing our work of listening to the folks. But I just want to reiterate, if you have any thoughts that the chair reflections before we get into our reflections. No, wow, chair. It sounds like no one, they're ready to get into the work.
Thanks, Commissioner Chambers, for clarifying that. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Awesome. Appreciate you. All right. So for me, I'm a reflections type person. And as one of the chairs of the Client and Family Leadership Committee, the past chair, Commissioner Tamplin, which I have the honor of serving with, and not to negate one of the committees against each other, but like for the Client and Family Leadership Committee, I, as a newer commission, needed to understand the accomplishments. Well, what's the past work, right? And so this conversation for both committees is right now a time for reflections, and we need to learn. The staff is here for folks that have been on these committees to see what have we accomplished, and we've accomplished so much, especially with the peer respite fundings and different funding and CRDP. But now it's the time we want to reserve for you all, and please chime in on the past work of the two committees. We want to hear from the members. So each of the committee members, please put your voice in. And we also want to hear of like both past and present, and from the public about the success and challenges. We know we heard Laurel say that there was some challenges. I know there's been some challenges in my committee about, I don't know, but I want to hear it because we need to know what our current, past, and present challenges are to inform our work. And then what are your thoughts on how, on what we can do to utilize to guide our work for the future work? So if folks chime in on past, present, and then like, how do we guide our work? That, as Commissioner Alvarez said, there was 3 other committees already in play. How do we combine our achievements and power in numbers to do the work? So I'm going to open it now because I've just been blabbering, but our purpose is to hear from you. And the staff is documented. Me and Commissioner Alvarez, Chair Alvarez, really wanted to hear the breath of folks here. So this is your time, and we want to encourage you, public and members, to speak now. And we're taking notes and recording. We're ready.
As always, if anyone wants to speak, go ahead and raise your hand and I can unmute.
Richards, Jason, the folks that have, especially like that I know in our committees, Sharon, Stacy. What's been successful? Angela, Claire's on here. I see a lot of folks. I can just start naming the names. No pressure.
Richard, I unmuted you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to try and wrap my head around this challenge you just gave us, because I've been on the CFLC for a long time. One thing I can point out that was sort of a recent accomplishment where I think we on the Client Family Leadership and also the Cultural and Linguistic Committee kind of joined forces to very forcefully and against the wishes of some of the commission staff at a very high level, we advocated for community-based practices and services commission side to go, or we did receive some pressure not to bring that up. And whenever, like, from the more official side of things, somebody sends the message that we're being troublesome, that always goads me to go even further and stronger. And we were successful to bringing it to the commission and actually forcing a vote on it. So the two committees have at times collaborated very powerfully. And this was only last year, I believe. And I see Stacy is nodding her head. Always great to work with you, Stacy. So one thought is that I think when we do collaborate, we can be extra powerful. I wouldn't go so far as to endorse the idea of combining the two committees. I'd hate for anything to get lost in the conversation. I think of course, they're complementary, but maybe it's a little apples and oranges, and these are both such important charges that we have. I'd hate for anything to kind of be moved down the list of priorities, or get lost in larger conversations, which we're bound to have. So I'm a little bit reserved about the idea of a combination. And client and family leadership, over the years, we have had people on the committee who are representing their organizations, are people in recovery and family members who are active with their various organizations. It's been a good space in which we've learned quite well sometimes to agree to disagree and form some powerful alliances across an aisle, which sometimes seems hard to cross. Probably CFLC, I think the most valuable thing to do is the commissioners come from so many varied backgrounds and organizationally, experience-wise. But we as a committee have been in a position to maybe elevate true community voices, people who will join us and speak out, and they don't necessarily represent an organization that is recognized on a state level. They don't necessarily belong to that community of people who have chosen that their recovery be expressed purely by getting a job in mental health systems and doing something like peer support, for example. But people who are in recovery and living independently in the communities, I think those voices are often in short supply in our conversations. And I'm proud that client family leadership, we've been able to bring voices like to the table. So I think so I can't think of any specifics right now, but I think in general, that's been something important that we've played a role in. So thank you.
Thank you, Richard, for that history. And I appreciate your thoughts on your reservation and our power of both committees and the importance of both committees. I don't know if we want to keep going and then we'll do reflections, but Chair, you're welcome to chime in at any point. Mariani, I don't know if you want to go to the next person.
Jason?
Hi, great. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you, Richard. I guess I want to start by congratulating the commission on so far securing funding. And I think that's really important. And I have limited time, so I'll say everything and I'll follow up by email. And if people have questions, I'll put my email in the chat. I think there's a both and possibility here. I think we're stronger to bring in as many voices as we can. And there are great opportunities for both groups to find a similar platform. And I think that together we can ask for things that we're more likely to get when we're asking together, like if there are bottom lines. And for me, I think that we can work together collectively to decide what those are. some of the things that I would like that to include is to make sure that we are working toward a recovery-oriented system of care that believes that everybody, that recovery is possible for everybody, however they define recovery, that we are, for example, engaged with understanding what it is that people want and how the system is doing at delivering those expectations. Things that, for example, SAMHSA has 4 pillars of recovery: home, health, meaning, and purpose. And that the system is measuring itself specifically by the number of people that are achieving their goals in those outcomes. And I think if we join forces in having both groups put out together, these are our statement of what this system has to deliver and how are we going to hold the system accountable. I think we'll have a better system and we'll have more voices participating in the system. Thank you.
Thank
you. Next we have Stacy.
Thank you. I'm Stacy Hiramoto with REMCO, the Racial and Ethnic Mental Health Disparities Coalition, and I have been a member of the CLCC. I have also been a member before it was an actual committee, so that's going way back. And I'll try not to speak too long, so let me just say a few things and maybe I'll chime in later. I'm very much in favor of keeping the committee separate, but as Richard said, we do work very well on certain issues and are very powerful together. So I think we can continue to do that, but I really feel that there are so many urgent issues from the consumer and family perspective, but also from the racial, ethnic, cultural, LGBTQ perspective, that I would not, if we had one meeting, I think it would be so many things. I mean, the meetings are already, what, an hour and a half, 2 hours. And if we had both, and again, I don't think either are more important, but that's why I just want to put a small plug in for keeping them separate, but again, having collaboration whenever we can. I want to be honest, and I want to say that I believe, not because it's the fault of the committee, but I do feel that the Client and Family Leadership Committee has been much stronger, particularly in the past. They've been much stronger because they had good leadership on the commission of consumers and family members that, had focus and understood statewide policy. And so, they dove into it. I think with the CLCC, there's been many, and I'll try to keep it short. At the beginning, we had some really stellar people on the committee, but at that time, and I'm talking a long time, I'm talking 15 years ago, okay, so I don't want anybody to think I'm talking about commissioners now, but we did not have commissioners that really understood or had a focus on reducing mental health disparities, or they did not represent the BIPOC and LGBTQ and immigrant and refugee communities very well because they were not from those communities. So when it came to the chair, we did not have a chair over the years that really understood, well, what can we do? So that was difficult. And by that time, some of the really good members got tired of being on the committee and left the committee. And then the commission got new members of the committee. And in general, I feel like they were extremely good at the local level, or perhaps in another community, but they but they didn't know statewide. They didn't really even know what the commission did, I think. And they also, so they didn't understand, well, what can we do on a statewide policy level? And again, it's not a criticism, but because there was very little in writing or shared vision, it was very difficult for the committee to move forward. Sometimes they would do things like they would hear presentations on like a CDEP or like a program, which is great. But then after that, what do you do with that information, right? It's great to hear about a great program, but if all you do is hear about it, if you didn't, you know, there was no further action. But I do want to commend the committee, the CLCC, because along with the CFLC, they did bring about one big policy change, which Prop 1 blew up, but at least we were able to get it done. Originally, there was language in the PEI regulations that said that transition age youth in college were to be prioritized. Now, transition age youth, most people didn't have a problem with transition age youth being a priority population in prevention and early intervention. But when you put the word in college, who is disproportionately not in college, right? People, you know, communities of kids from communities of color, kids from the LGBTQ community, poor kids, and also kids, frankly, with serious mental health issues, had a difficult time getting in college. So it took years and years, but the committees did finally get the commission to change that. I was so proud of both of the committees. So I think the committees are capable of doing really strong things. And I don't want to talk too much, so I'll stop there.
Thank you, Stacy, so much for your history and knowledge and encouragement and reflection. And I want to see some more hands too, the future, present. But go ahead, Mariani.
All right, Teresa.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I wanted to mention that, you know, over the last several years, the staff of the commission has put together some good policy papers, like Striving for Zero to reduce suicide in California and school-based mental health and others. And I think one of the roles of your committees is to be part of those papers, making sure that whoever's working on those is getting a good input from folks that are users of the system, you know, that have lived experience and family members in diverse communities. I think that's so important. And then the other area that comes to mind, which you mentioned, you know, finding or creating grant opportunities in specific areas where we really need to increase the continuum of care is important, like the peer respites and other types of facilities. And I think your committees are part of that as well, and informing what goes into those grant opportunities and maybe even reviewing, you know, who would be receiving those types of grants. And, you know, there's other times also when the commission is determining if they want to support legislation. So I think it should be going to your committees as well. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is just how important it is to have processes that allow your committee to review, you know, stakeholder input on a big level. You know, since we're such a big state, finding ways to have public forum to get input and surveys and that sort of thing.
Is that it?
Thank you, Teresa. I appreciate that. And that was really good. I think one of the bigger things that you highlighted was like us informing, like being able to inform from that cultural and linguistic lens and from that client and family lens, everything that's going out. And I don't know if that's possible, but having that lens is important, especially if the committees are focused on specific things. And although they might reflect those communities, that might not be their main emphasis. So I love that. And go ahead, Mariani.
All right, we have Joel.
Thank you so much. First, I just really want to appreciate the commission for engaging in a discourse as opposed to a presentation, a sort of unilateral back and forth without interaction. This level of engagement is critical. And again, I've had the pleasure of sitting in on other meetings chaired by Chair Alvarez and other members of the team, and they've been very engaging, and I've appreciated that. I may very well, my name's Joel Baum. I use he and him pronouns. I'm with Safe Passages, an organization in Oakland seeking to interrupt cycles of poverty, and also a member of the California Reducing Disparities Project sustainability team. And just really, really excited to share that we've had our funding renewed for another year after it was threatened in the May revise. So that was a big, huge, heavy lift. But I want to raise something, and again, forgive me if I'm speaking about something that's been decided, but I'd understood at one point that even the CLCC and other subcommittees might disappear for a different kind of committee structure. And so if I'm wrong about that, I'm extremely happy. But regardless, the idea of combining them, these two committees concerns me. We know in the current federal context, our populations are being erased, literally transgender individuals being erased from monuments such as Stonewall, being written out of all federal documents, right? So, and the erasure of DEI work seeks to basically whitewash our country, right? Including the mental health field. And California has historically been such a powerful counterbalance to these kinds of things. And I think this offers us an opportunity to do that again. And the reason I bring it up in this regard is that by having a CLCC on its own that is specifically charged with cultural and linguistic competency, it puts a stake in the ground. It says that issues of racism, issues of systematic oppression will be talked about openly, will be acknowledged, will be addressed. And if we get rid of those entirely, and even if we combine it with another committee, I think we threaten that. I think we have the possibility of diluting that work at a time when explicitly saying we pay attention to these issues matters more than ever. I do think the idea of interconnectedness, right? Interdependence is great. And I don't know if it's been held before, but maybe formalizing a liaison role from one committee to the other, where each committee has a liaison who officially kind of connects and has the responsibility of bringing work back and forth. Maybe that's a way to keep that synergy going. But I would strongly encourage you to keep the CLCC and the family committee separate, because the work they do individually is so critical. Lots more to say, but again, really appreciating the level of engagement. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Joel. Your words matter. It matters, and I appreciate you.
Right, next we have Savani.
Hi, everyone. My name is Savani Lee, and I'm the Health and Policy Director for Orange County Asian and Pacific Islander Community Alliance. Thank you so much. We got an invitation to come to this meeting from one of our staff. This is my first time hearing about CLCC, but I have heard about the commission. Since it's my first time at this meeting, I don't have any feedback in regards to what has this group has done. But I think in terms of future, some things that we are seeing as an organization, OCAPICA is not a CRDP grantee, but we do have a lot of services around behavioral health. One thing that we are starting to see is the need to support our community-based organizations and nonprofit organizations that serve diverse communities to build their infrastructure around fee-for-service. Because we know that contracts and grants are being moved into this fee-for-service model, and a lot of federal funding is ending to support these services. So I think one thing that this level of support could be in terms of different levels. One potential idea is the first level is how do we adequately resource the organizations and the populations that serve languages and cultures that are not typically served. So for example, the Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander community, those languages are not considered threshold Medi-Cal languages. And so there's a lot of services that are Pacific Islander community-based organizations are not quote unquote eligible to get funding or grants for. The second type of level could be, how could we better serve organizations and CBOs that serve multiple aspects that are not traditionally serviced only by behavioral health? So for example, at OCAPICA, we have youth development programs, community health workers or promotoras. We also do research. We also have behavioral health. And the trauma that is happening currently in Southern California around the ICE raids, that shows up in different ways. They're not going to come to our office for service. Another example is we have community members, our community health workers have been getting calls from the community about asking for help on access to care, like picking up their prescriptions. And then we identified they're scared to pick up their prescription because they're afraid to leave their home because they're going to get picked up. So how can we, as a statewide, how can we help our community organizations respond to these immediate threats and immediate needs? Thank you.
I wanted to say thank you, Savani. I think we've met like 10 plus 15 years ago when I was at SSG or a long time ago, but your work is OCAPICA. I wrote for OCAPICA a long time ago as an analyst. The work of specific cultures, particularly the API community, is unique and it needs to be highlighted. And that's the breadth of the conversations we want to hear. And then the opportunities to build the CBOs that across the board of our disenfranchised community is an issue. Our nonprofits are closing down, Black, Brown, API, it don't matter. This shift is having us to rethink everything you just said. So I think we can leverage that strength and knowing that and how we could build the capacity, because at the end of the day, if the people that's serving these most vulnerable folks don't have our capacity because of the shifts and because of the gaps, then this is not even going to matter because we are the ones that are really out there. So I just want to put respect on what you're saying, everybody, but just really highlighting the work of building us up to the people as well. And then how do we serve the folks that are afraid because of what's happening? So thank you. Go ahead, Mariani. Just want to say that.
All right. Next we have Ahmad.
Hello, everyone. Commissioner Chambers, you said something that made me actually jump on because what I have is probably more for like item number 4 on your agenda. But when you used the word like informing, it really made me think about kind of when you said like the role and function of the committees. If we can identify, you guys, I'm not a committee member, but if there's a way to identify what is the goal, what is the purpose of the commission, the subcommittee in terms of informing, is it just general information for individuals' edification, or is it information so that it can become something actionable? Is it information, and I think Stacey used the point of like, are we highlighting a program, which is great, but then what is the next step? Is like, this is a program that program A, B, and C has, great. But is it more of this is a program A, B, C has, this is how we think it can address this particular need. This is how we think it could be, you know, address this gap. This is how it could improve equity. This is how maybe it can improve access. This is a way that it can engage communities more effectively. So I think it's like when you said is the information, I think is a key is this could be a medium where information is exchanged by a lot, the commission. So it's a way for commissioners to learn about some of the things going on. I think it's a way for some of the communities to highlight need areas. I think it's a way that we can also explore how, and I think that when we said like informing, I think also then like who's the audience, right? Is the audience people coming to inform the commissioners in this committee, or is it kind of a collective like, hey, we're all informing? So it's a lot more like I think Noel said, this kind of cross collaboration discussion, because I think a lot of times when we see from a county perspective, we come to the OAC to get our plans approved and then we're kind of out. And on some of these committees, you'll see some counties, but it's not heavily involved in there. And I think it doesn't necessarily be heavily involved, but as one of the catalysts in getting this work done and being kind of sometimes either the direct provider or the middle person with our CBOs, I think there's value in having some of us at the table. But again, it's like, are we coming for just information, or is it going to be, hey, this is information that we can now take and operationalize? It's really like, are there, I'm trying to be strength-based, so not use the word like problem, but it's like, what problems are we solving for? What are the opportunities that we could be utilizing? And I think if we can identify that as a group, then it gives people more, I don't say more incentive, but more purpose of like, what am I coming to the table with? So when Chairperson Alvarez is setting the agenda and it's these things, then I look at the agenda and go, okay, yeah, this is something we need to get involved with, or this may be something we may need to let our CBOs know. Hey, have you guys seen this topic, this information? There's a way you can get people more involved. So yeah, that's just, I think those might be like things for us to think about of like, you know, the information part, when you said that was kind of like the light bulb went off. I'm like, yes, this could be like a great place where we can exchange information, but not information in terms of like, here's just a FYI, information in terms of how it becomes a catalyst to do things. And not to put work on, for example, the commission, but there could be things that priorities then based on information that's shared that the committee can take back to the commission and say, hey, these are things we would like to be interested in. It could inform with the commission having a broader role within BHSA of saying, hey, these are things we want to see. Hey, these are things we're hearing from the communities. These are things we're hearing from counties. How do we address those things in terms of greater inclusion, greater consumer voice, greater health equity? So it could be, again, like that information strategizing, and we're all working together versus it's kind of, here's what's going on. Great. Now let's all go off to our own corner and try to do this on our own. So I think it could create more collaboration if some of those things are maybe identified. So, and then I'll come back for your fourth item because that's where I have an idea.
And I kind of got a little bit ahead of our chair on, you know, but I think I just want to say it's good to see you. But I am also the highlight, like what stuck to me was the role of the counties. Like the counties used to come and just get their HSA plan approved. And, you know, and maybe here's some things, but now the role has shifted, right? How do we bring, like, be subject matter experts and bring our power and force to the counties, to the managed care plans, and let's just bring it a little further than just informing. Once we inform, what's our power? What's our influence? Like, because we got so much power in this room. So I don't know. I just was really like thinking, like, because as we do the research for the peer respite project, and we're doing our site visits. Shout out to the staff that's going across our state and doing this, but the goal is to influence and to empower our counties as well to understand like the breadth and the purpose of like, and for this is just for the respites of why it's important to make that investment. So for me, it's like, how do we influence and when I'll just reiterate, how do we influence all the committees, influence the commission, influence the counties to get in? And how about we add that into the managed care plans who are responsible for us now as well, that don't have a commission as well. So yeah, I really wanted to say that everything resonates and we are on time for the next agenda item. I don't know if there's any other folks, Mariani, for comments, because I've just been chiming in on your notes before I end my thoughts.
No, that was yeah, the last person we had.
Awesome. All right. So I just want to thank everybody. And I'm the type of leader that do call out people. So don't worry about me calling you out. It's all in love. But it really was to get the breadth of this work. And I appreciate it. But let's keep these reflections in mind as we move forward to the next agenda item on the role and the collaboration. And I will turn it over to our amazing chair, Alvarez.
Thanks so much, Commissioner Chambers. I want to build on a little bit because I agree with you on this discussion because we sort of jumped around from reflections to future oriented to Ahmad's comments, but to others as well. And I want to highlight, as the chair of the CLCC in that position, right? Some of those comments were directed at me, and I hear it. I receive that feedback. But I also want to give credit to you all for showing up on two examples. One, we brought the immigrant and refugee RFP to the CLCC. And as a result of that discussion, that RFP was made stronger. It was made stronger in centering local organizations and the application process and the listening session where applicants can go, right? Like that was a direct result of the CLCC conversation. And then the second one that completely stands out in my mind is changing who is eligible to receive Mental Health Wellness Act grants and ensuring that community organizations could be prioritized, that it wasn't just counties that would receive funds, but that we were highlighting the opportunity for community organizations to be eligible. And that directly came, I think, from both committees, but definitely came from the CLCC. And so I think that speaks to what I heard from a lot of folks. What are the concrete opportunities where we can see input isn't just in one ear out the other, but is actually influence the work that the commission is doing? And so I really appreciate the feedback that came up in those reflections that highlights those concrete opportunities. And that's a natural transition to this next agenda item where we are talking about what does the role of the committees look like moving forward? What does collaboration look like? Really shifting the conversation to the future. So again, we've been talking about the CFLC and the CLCC, and I want to just throw out a few questions. Again, this conversation has already been heading in that direction, but one of the questions is, how do these committees collaborate now within this new advisory committee structure that the commission has? We didn't have the program committee before. We didn't have the legislation and external affairs committee before, the budget committee. We are intentionally moving in that direction in order to create these opportunities for commissioner discussion that frankly often don't happen in a full commission meeting. Like to the point that's been brought up, it's too much to cover in too short of amount of time for meaningful discussion. So what would it look like for the committees to engage in that work? Additionally, I heard loud and clear the need to not, and I really appreciate, Joel, your comments around erasure, right? Like this isn't the time to ignore the very unique, diverse communities that we have. At the same time, what does that meaningful representation look like? When Stacy, you say, we don't have enough time for everything we want to talk about. What is that? What do you want to use that time for? Because discussion doesn't always get us where we want to get as far as impact. So what does it look like? What are those concrete opportunities? Like I just mentioned, the RFP input and review. Obviously, you're not looking at the actual language of the RFP because we're not allowed to do that. But you can definitely think about, what is the purpose of this? What are the outcomes? Who's eligible? How much time? What are, those sorts of things. Those are like concrete opportunities. So how are we using that time together? And then a key question is, how are we not duplicating efforts, right? And instead really supporting this shared learning and coordination across the commission, let alone these committees, but across the commission. So more of the same, honestly, because you all have been talking about this already, but how can you help us build out this structure? And one thing that we want to emphasize, because this has come up, we're not, what is that saying where, you're throwing spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks? Like, we're not doing that. There are concrete opportunities that this commission is charged with, right? One is the Innovation Partnership Fund. That is a key thing that because of the Behavioral Health Services Act now falls squarely on the commission's shoulders. We want to make sure, as was heard, I hope, at the last commission discussion, where does community voice come in that process, right? As part of the program committee, right? But what does it look like? So that's it, one concrete idea. We're not just discussing for discussing's sake or discussion's sake, but we are really wanting to prioritize the work of the commission where there's direct influence. So that's one example that we wanted to bring up. So I'm going to start with the first question and invite folks to respond. Ahmad, I'm looking at you because you said you had ideas around item 4. But how can these committees collaborate with our new advisory committees and inform or influence the work of the program committee, the budget committee, the legislative and external affairs committee? Or feel free to, move on to other questions, but I'm going to open it up there.
All right, it's your time. Go ahead.
Since Chairperson Alvarez called on me, I will go ahead and take up this time, but I promise after that I'll mute myself and keep my word count to a minimal. Just for anyone who didn't know, my name is Ahmad Brahmi. I don't think I had introduced myself. I'm with Fresno County. I oversee our planning and quality management. I'm also the ESM for Fresno County, and I've been an ESM, as Stacy knows, for the past 16 years. So kind of knee deep in the health equity work. One of my passion areas, which I think you will all acknowledge, is an area that is a field of landmines now that we're trying to navigate through, right? In our current setting. But I think there's two things I'm going to kind of try to hit on real quick. I think the role, as you said, Chairperson Alvarez, of the commission has changed, right? It was and years ago was kind of the way it was framed for some of us was the commission was kind of like our statewide advisory board. So you have your local advisory board. It's more of the statewide advisory board. Like you said, we brought our innovation plans to get approved. And then there were some projects that the OAC would sometimes do. And so it was the nature of the role and function of the commission was different. But the commission's role has expanded. I think we have that dynamic that's different, but we also have new commissioners, new administration, new staff. And I think this is like a great opportunity from a county standpoint, because that's all I can really speak to, of kind of forging like new relationships with new opportunities. So before it was, I would say, for a lack of a better term, and I hope the counties don't get mad at me for this, but it seemed like our interaction with the OAC was more of a transactional. I got to bring my plan to you, you approve it, I go back and do my innovation plan, right? Versus with the expanded role of the commission now, I think it really allows more opportunity of like, hey, we need to work together. We need certain things done. The OAC is going to provide maybe oversight, but they can also become an advocacy arm as well, which the commission had done that in the past, advocating for certain legislation and certain opportunities. But I think there's an opportunity for everyone to kind of like, it's a fresh set. So you've got new staff, new commissioners, new role. So it's, hey, and for the counties, it's the BHSA is kind of a reset for us, right? Because we're not just going like, okay, the integrated plan is literally like redesigning our system of care. Because before it was like the MHSA plan was for MHSA funded services. The BHSA plan is like your entire system of care. So it's allowing us to do some redesign. So I think it's a great opportunity to, at least from, and this is not for any of the other partners on here, but for the counties and the commission to kind of like, okay, like let's reset and let's look at where the opportunities, those concrete opportunities where we can do a lot of work together to benefit the community. And I think I think Commissioner Chambers, you mentioned like even pulling the managed care plans and like, look, you guys are at the table now, so come on, you're gonna have to put in some work too. So I think there's opportunities in that regard for us to really create, instead of that transactional kind of a relationship that maybe it had been for a while, to where it really becomes a collaborative, to where statewide we're working together on just different goals and projects. To my second part, which was kind of like the idea, the pitch I was going to share is an example, like going back to Commissioner Chambers' point of like informative. And I know we've got a number of CDEPs and CRDP projects on here. One of the things that I think, and Stacy can probably speak to this as other people, I think people who were writing some of the language around the BHSA may not have, it's very broad, may not have understand the nuances of all the different parts of the BHSA, right? The work, and this is not in a way that's knocking anyone. But CDEPs, community defined, are literally that. It's community defined. And I think the interpretation or the understanding by some was that these were population specific and not community specific. So if you think of it as population specific, you may say, well, Chairperson Alvarez, here's a program that works with LGBTQ Latina population, so we're going to give you this, versus like, yes, but that was created in, let's say, Los Angeles. How is that going to work in a rural migrant community where everyone knows everyone, where like people may not be out? So you have, so yeah, there's that, and then there's also the cultural population. So I think part of what CDIPs do really well is be able to address those intersectionalities, because it's what works in this local level, in this neighborhood, in these 5 blocks, in this side of town. But I think they were written into the manuals and were written into the list as more of population type work versus community defined. And I think one of the things is that we tried to do a couple of years back, and this is why I bring it up, because it's one of our active innovation plans. So, and part of our job with our innovation plans is to try to contribute, at least it had been, how does your project contribute to statewide learning, right? And so one of the things we had taken on a couple of years back was to fund those CDEPs, 3 we had in Fresno, that were on the verge of, again, once before, losing their funding. And our goal was to fund it as a bridge, but to really look at how do we move those CDEPs from, or CRDPs, from where they were state funded to being part of our MHSA plans, specifically looking at PEI. As we all know, that got kind of upended about a year ago when it was just like, we're not going to do PEI at the local level with BHSA. And so that created a whole nother challenge for us. And so we came back to the commission, got approval to get a TA. So we got third sector to assist us in how do we do the sustainability planning with this new change. And so we've had a third party really look at how to do the work, and their work has yielded some really interesting information, which goes back to that information point that Commissioner Chambers was talking about. This wouldn't be like, hey, look at another CDEP. It would be more of, for counties, if you are considering a CDEP, these are some of the steps and things you can do. For CDEPs and CRDPs, if you're looking to engage with county funding, these are the things that to navigate. And just in general, for community organizations or communities that are like, hey, how do we become a CDEP? How do we address the needs of our specific community in these 5 blocks? Not statewide, not but in these 5 blocks, how do we do it? So my pitch is going to be like later on for the commission to your guys, for the committee, would be to look at maybe a presentation from third sector on that, because I think it would contribute to learning for both commission to kind of look at some options. I think it would provide opportunities for a lot of community-based organizations. If they're not a CDEP, what are the things? And I think where we've been kind of having the gap, and Stacy and some of you guys can maybe speak to this a little more, is with the CDEPs and CRDPs, counties have not been as hands-on because it was a state CDPH project. It wasn't even an OAC project. So there's always kind of been that kind of gap in there. And I concern is now is with the DHA saying, here's a list of approved CDEPs, or here's a list of CDEPs. I go, it helps to have a place to start, but my concern is we're talking about community defined. How am I going to pick? Do I go to my community and go say, do I go, Joel, hey, pick from this list, this menu, which one of these programs do you think is best identifies your community? It doesn't factor in like a lot of the local variables. And again, like I said, those intersectionalities. So not saying the list is bad, but I think we could empower counties and providers to do that with just some information. So down the line, we would love to have them kind of maybe present to this committee in the future. But again, going back to my original point is, I think there's great opportunity to create synergy now, because you guys have a different rule. We have to redesign our system with BHSA. So it's kind of like a fresh start for everyone. Like, hey, we're coming in fresh. Like, how do we build from here, this ground up together this time around? So I'm going to mute myself. Thank you, guys.
Can I just say real quick, Chair? I think the biggest thing I heard was also like, not just the community and the counties and the role change, but like how we can be a partner with our new relationship and a partner. And then how do we have learnings from the community and the counties so that we can inform the legislator and the governor as well? Like what is going on, like as we implement, the Prop 1 BHSA, and how we can be that subject matter expert, because we have these folks as well on the table, at the table as well.
I missed the very last piece of that, Commissioner Chambers, but I think we got the gist of what you were saying. So thank you for that. Building on your comments, I also heard like loud and clear that like the process of learning is like ongoing, right? So this idea of third sector, which many of us are familiar with, but not everybody, in utilizing their expertise in helping, frankly, the commission operate differently, right? Operate differently and be more responsive to the moment. So that's we have various commission staff here, so I'm that are hearing this. Thanks for that suggestion, Ahmad. I'm now like my wheels are sort of turning around that. Something to ponder as absolutely, but also more importantly, again, I've had this like thing about when you know better, you do better. And so what does it look like to do better in this work moving forward? So thank you for that. Richard, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I hope I'm in the realm that we're talking about, but this has been a great conversation. And I'm trying to wrap around how this is going to look like. I'm just thinking, and I'm going to take an example, the Cultural Linguistic Committee. What I thought coming into this would be a way of moving forward is for these committees to create standards from those committees as to how RFPs and how programs should look like that are directed to county jurisdictions and organizations. And that we are advising the commission adopts it, and at some point when there are program reports, the commission reviews those reports to see if these grantees are living up to those standards. From there, the committees come back to tweak any recommendations, see what is working from the community or from the county, make modifications to those recommendations, so it becomes a living document. From there, we give out reports back to those different constituencies and government. When we talk about legislative, I'm sure I'm looking political strategy. A lot of the caucuses will like to know how the organizations in their communities are doing around the various target populations. So it's really everyone is engaged and everyone is included, bringing their expertise to the commission, but the commission hold the grantees, whether they're big jurisdictions like LA County, accountable to the commission and the state of California. I don't know if I'm off base there, but I would see that's what would be a good way to function as a commission and standing committees. Everybody in this room and outside of this room that have been involved have so much to give. Great experience, and they come from different places. When you talk, I'm serving the Latino gay women's organization in Fresno. Okay, so that's great. Latino organization. Well, who's in the Latino community? Are they Mexicans? Are they Central Americans? Same thing with the Asian population. Not one size fits all, because we're also talking about Filipinos, Japanese, Chinese, and it goes on and on and on. So there's a lot of details, a lot of constituencies that we can represent if we all have a voice, and then hold everybody accountable. And again, I don't know if I'm off base, but it's 4:23 in the afternoon, and I think I sound good to myself.
You always sound good, Richard. You're not off base at all. I think what this conversation is intended to do is to hear from you what you're interpreting as that meaningful engagement and what it looks like. And you gave, a couple of concrete opportunities around that. So that's absolutely what we're looking for. And in particular, your experience as a former committee member, those reflections, I think, help inform that policy strategy or that strategy moving forward. So appreciate that very much. Eugene, you as well as a former committee member, welcome your comments, please.
One second, let's see. Eugene, if you still wanted to make comment, could you raise your hand?
I'm sorry. I actually did.
Oh, there we
I had my
Okay.
hand raised, but it
undid
I
it.
had turned it off when the chair actually called my name. But sorry about that. There was an issue with me being able to unmute myself. But I just wanted to second what Richard was sharing when I was first introduced to this committee. It was really that was kind of my interpretation of exactly what we would be doing in terms of sharing expertise, finding ways of as this body being able to hold agencies and counties accountable to meeting these particular standards, sharing best practices that from the experts that we've had as a part of our group, and being able to really pinpoint the things that we want to hold entities accountable for, and being able to report back out on the trends and what's working, what's not working, exactly what Richard was sharing, in more of a quality, improvement type of way, and really being able to, monitor its impact on outcomes, because that's for me the biggest thing is like, what are we doing is actually improving outcomes, because that's at the root of what we are all striving for, right? And so anywhere we can kind of tie what we're doing and its connection to outcomes that are actually happening in the communities, throughout the state, and supporting vulnerable communities, underserved communities. I think that's where we can, I think make the best use of our time. And also, I love the combination, the collaboration amongst those, also with lived experience, and being able to, kind of tie those together, because I think they do work hand in hand. And so those are just my thoughts. I just, want to piggyback on some of the things Richard shared. And I'm sorry for being late to blame the county for giving me like 50 different things.
Absolutely. No worries at all. Thank you for being here with us. Appreciate those comments, especially the monitoring impact on outcomes and holding ourselves accountable to that. Where does that, or how does that show up in our work, both as a commission and as a committee? Because that's a lot of pressure, Eugene, right? Like that's a lot of pressure in the work that we do. And at the same time, we want to make sure we're contributing to that, right? Like that. So the marker of progress around that for us uniquely, I think, is an important question to hold. So I appreciate you calling us in to that. Teresa, please.
Outcomes. I wanted to comment on the outcomes also, and how important that is for your committees to be reviewing reports on that. I'm on another council, and annually we're looking at a couple of different types of reports. We're looking at outcomes, we'll look at access, so we can see what the access rates are for different ethnicities and cultural groups. And then we're also looking at what are the outcomes for those groups in different categories. And we can tell if people are accessing, but we never know, does that mean they're getting good services and having good outcomes? So I think it's really important. And then within the BHSA, I think that that your commission has a requirement to report on outcomes. And maybe it begins to the legislature. Maybe it begins in a couple years that you have that. And DHCS is determining what those outcomes are that will be that will be tracked. And so I wanted to just mention, you know, the Performance and Equity Committee for DHCS for the Behavioral Health Transformation right now is working on that, and including, you know, that we should have requirements for culture, race, ethnicity, LGBTQ, so that we can gather that data. The other thing I wanted to mention is with the council the state council I'm on, we annually look at consumer satisfaction data as well. And we created our own document survey, which we update occasionally just to make it relevant, so that we're getting, and we ask for it to be you know, dispersed throughout the state. We usually get about 1,000 back, and we can hear from people in terms of, you know, their own input for those that have received services. And that's important as well. And I think we have demographic data on that one as
Teresa, are you still talking? Or
no.
Oh, okay. Just making sure. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Actually, and to your question, Brenda, can I invite you in here to opine or reflect on what Teresa mentioned and Eugene lifted up around the outcomes and what has shifted, or maybe there's something we can come back with, but what has shifted in the reporting of those outcomes? Because I'm also hearing, and this is something that I've been pondering a lot about, is the commission is often a doorway to the public in ways that represent the administration as a whole. And for better or worse, that happens, right? And is there an opportunity to maximize that space on behalf of not only the responsibilities of the commission, but our collective responsibility as an administration to move forward, right? So, because I hear that loud and clear. People bring up things related to the commission's jurisdiction and everything else. So that being said, Brenda, would love any reflections on the outcomes question.
Thank you for the invitation and appreciate the conversation. You know, I think part of it is I'm still trying to wrap my head around on all of our responsibilities under the new BHSA. You know, the commission, you know, even pre-me has done a lot of work over the years to build out you know, data through the transparency suite. And so I know those are things that our team is looking at. I'm actually on that behavioral health transformation, quality and equity advisory committee that Teresa was just mentioning. And so as is some of the other team members here at the CBH. So I think what we're trying to figure out is how do all these pieces connect together, the roles and responsibilities of, say, DHCS versus the commission, so we're not duplicating work, but like maximizing the resources across the space, both spaces. The other thing I would say too is thinking about stratifications of the data, or like how we can slice the data, because that's where we get the true look or peek into identifying those gaps and inequities. And so being thoughtful about that, and then how we can take those data and how these committees can look at those data. You know, what's a way that we can package that for these committees to look at and think about and get grounded in data, so it helps inform the conversations of these committees through whatever work the committees are being tasked to do. And I think too, some of the work that we are going to want to lean on these committees for is things like you were just saying earlier, we have the Innovation Partnership Fund, we have all these grants, you know, and so having the expertise of these committees to be able to look at all the work that we're doing and weigh in and say, did you think about this? Did you think about that? You know, like here's all these different considerations, and then using the data and, you know, to do all of that, and then building the outcomes into those projects and those like the RFPs and the evaluations that we're going to be doing to say, did these grants that we invested in actually make a difference in the communities in which they were implemented? So I think there's a few different pieces. You can use data to inform the work so that it's guiding our thinking and guiding the thinking of the committees, but then also using data to track outcomes from the work that we're actually doing through these grants, if that makes sense. So I'm seeing kind of as two things that we can be valuable in this space.
Yeah, that's helpful, Brenda. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a good conversation to continue to keep open. And again, ensuring we have like a shared understanding of those outcomes and what we're shooting for, right? So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Chair Albert, can I add one more thing just to your
Of course.
Well, as we look at data and our new responsibilities as well, but like the community planning process as well, like how do we utilize like our resources to help the community understand? Like I was just on a town hall that was for, I won't mention the county, they're amazing county, but like I don't know if everybody knew, like all the community members knew that it was like a town hall for the BHSA for their local county, and they were planning and trying to get input. And I'm like, I'm here. Like I don't know. I just was like, how can we leverage and support the counties, because the counties have a new process for their local planning process and DHS, and how do we not duplicate those efforts, but really the person that looks like me, how do we get them to the local meeting? How do we get the people that look like you, like like the data? Yeah, but how do we get them like even there to give info? Like, or are the right people? Do we go? Do we show up? And this is a broader question, but like, do we show up at the jails, or with the parent? I don't know, but how do we get the real input? That's not going to probably, unless we incur. I don't know. I'm in the mix of it too. I've been a part of the BHSA implementation since its inception, when the DHCS is it started started the process. And I see the data is a really big piece that the counties are going to have to uplift, but then also the stakeholder input is a whole other beast. And how do we get our folks that can tell the story? And like you said, Chair Alvarez, that we be that voice of uplifting and be the subject matter expert, and be like that. I don't know. I see us as the pinnacle, like we have everybody. Like, yeah, they have this stuff. The agency has, DHEA has it, but we have the community input. We know what's going on. So I'm sorry, I just wanted to chime in. I get excited about this. I know Angela has her hand up as well.
Appreciate you, Commissioner Chambers. I think that enthusiasm and commitment and dot connecting is exactly why we need you in these spaces. Angela, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Angela Brand. I use she, her pronouns. I not on the committee, but I have worked in and around the space for a while. Things that Ahmad shared, the work that, Stacy has shared, Laurel, there's so many great comments. I think the one thing that sticks with me is the commission is so publicly accessible. And I think this is a little bit what you were saying, Commissioner Chambers, that that public accessibility can be an opportunity for the commission to hear from the public, even if it's not necessarily directly tied to the work of the commission, but it's really that community input. The commission's done a lot of work in the last 8 months to really sort of turn in a different direction. It feels like there's a lot more openness to hearing from the community, to taking that feedback, that input, to being informed by what the community has to say. And I think that that's a really welcome breath of fresh air. I would encourage the commission to continue to take that community input, to be open to the advocates that come to the meeting, that share public comment, find out how that dialogue can continue, even if it doesn't fit in the box of what the commissioners can and can't do during public comment. But really think about the feedback that's shared, and how the commission can be that liaison or that intermediary to connect the dots. And the last thing that I would say too is that, with this conversation around, the intersection of the work of the CFLC and the CLCC, recognizing that there is a lot of shared interest and shared priorities, and thinking about how that can inform the work of the commission, some of these statewide priorities. I would, be remiss if I didn't say, this has come up with other folks that have commented, but really think about the work of the stakeholder contractors, the work that they're doing with their local level folks, and using that to really expand the network of community stakeholders, so that's input that you can get from all of these folks, that really can tell you, like, do you have your finger on the pulse of the landscape as it stands today? Is the commission moving in the right direction? Are they supporting communities? And how can they broker those relationships with counties and, you know, those that are making decisions both locally at the state level? And then maybe a little plug for the, you know, a throwback to the community forums that the committees used to hold. Those were a really great place to engage with folks locally, to hear about what was happening. So those are just my thoughts, but you know, I want to echo Joel's thank you as well. Just having the conversation and letting folks be able to share kind of where they're at with this instead of just maybe some presentations. Again, it's just a really nice breath of fresh air from the commission. So thank you.
Thank you, Angela. I appreciate your contributions to the discussion and those concrete ideas. And folks, building on other people's comments, by all means, please do, because many folks have been in this space for a long time and know what went down and what didn't and what worked and what didn't. So as people bring things up, if you're like, oh yeah, I have thoughts on that, by all means, please feel free to chime in on that. Laurel, please. And then I have Michelle and then Stacy.
Hello, I'm here again. You may hear lots of little voices and big voices. I'm in a house with about 20 some people right now. So I tried to find a corner. So my question is, what kind of staff support will be available to these two committees, whatever is resolved in total? And will the committee members going forward be asked to be available to work on issues as well as appear at the committee meetings to participate in those? Will there be additional responsibilities and opportunities for them to make a difference offered? I think those are important things to think about. Personally, I don't think joining the two committees together is a good thing at this time. I think that there is just too much going on in the war against cultural and linguistic competence that we're experiencing. So I would say, at least for the next 3.5 years, let's be separate. That would be a good idea going forward. And then let's see how things happen. I really liked that the colleague from Okapaka in Orange County brought up several items that could be a 1-year goal. A fee for service, working on that. Threshold languages, that's been one of my favorites. And I still have questions that were never answered. She mentioned people picking up prescriptions, or maybe another person did. And that's a very specific, tiny, but very important issue. And I guess I would also talk about crisis funding. We're in a crisis. But really, war is being made against us. And it's being made in the form of financial sanctions. All right. And so that could be something that would get very specific. How can the commission help organizations survive the next 3.5 years? And I think there's been some talk about that at the commission meetings, some thinking about that. Information exchanges are always good at meetings and could be prepared and are useful. But I think focusing on something that you can say at the end, that you started this at the beginning of the year and you actually accomplished it, or maybe you didn't. What can be learned from failure to win that battle? I like the examples that you cited of particular concrete of the committee in the past. This is an opportunity to maybe focus.
cutting out a little bit, Laurel. Is that for everybody? Okay, good.
Can be salvaged alive during this.
Laurel? Yeah, I think we lost you. Um,
Yeah, it looks like we lost her.
But we did hear your feedback, Laurel, and actually, you know, your question around like this type of staff support for the committees, because that matters, right, as far as the work ahead of us, and also like the additional responsibilities. I think that's part of this conversation and discussion, right, as far as like what the workload is on committee members and opportunities for input. And I hope you come back to us. But you know, it's interesting because in preparing for this conversation, one thing that came up, just this, and this is like a very small opportunity. Oh, she's back. But like when we do committee report outs, our committee members can give committee report outs, right? Versus commissioners doing that. Like this is a very small example, but an important one that concretely demonstrates shared power, right? Shared ownership over that conversation and dialogue and takeaways. So like that was one thing that I think, Laurel, is in direct response to what you said about what are the expectations of committee members in this new space or new era. And then I heard you and others have said this around there's so much going on that's impacting marginalized communities in this time. And I could not agree more, right, to my opening comments. And at the same time, is that is the listening session component a function of the committee, or is that a function, an activity that the committee participates in and hosts, right? Like these community forums, which I want to learn more about actually. Because that's two different things, right? Like, are we only listening as a committee, or is the committee hosting that on behalf of the commission? So it's a subtle shift, but an important one as far as like the activities moving forward. So you got me thinking a lot about your comments, Laurel. So thank you for that. Michelle, I'm going to hand it over to you, and hopefully you either are muted or can unmute yourself.
There, okay, maybe I can. There I go. Hi. My name is Michelle Darling. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a guest at this meeting, so I really appreciate the opportunity to speak. I'm not part of the commission. I'm a program evaluator by profession with LPC Consulting in Sacramento, and I'm actually part of one of the 5 CRDP technical assistance provider teams with a focus on evaluation. So I work with the African American Technical Assistance Provider team. And the TAPS, Technical Assistance Provider Teams, is one of the innovative pieces of the CRDP that really has had a huge impact on the success of the initiative. And I wanted to speak to the issues of collecting data and stakeholder engagement. Like I said, I'm an evaluator, so my ears always perk up when we talk about data and outcomes. And just suggesting to really tap into the community-based organization partners as trusted messengers, as Ahmad mentioned, you know, especially for understanding the local context of collecting data. Collecting data statewide is notoriously difficult because of many issues in terms of language and understanding and comprehension and literacy. But thinking about really tapping into those partners, not only for inviting people to come and make public comment, but also in helping to build the capacity of individuals to come and make public comment. There is a skill, there is a comfort level, and there's just a confidence that can be really supported by those trusted messengers, those trusted partners, people from community who they trust, not having someone, quite honestly, who looks like me come in and tell them how to make public comments. Also, the other thing, just wanted to consider, suggest that the committee consider capacity building and technical assistance to help meet those requirements for data collection and reporting. I'm not sure how that mechanism would work, but just wanted to put a plug in for that. So again, thank you. As a guest, I really do appreciate the opportunity to speak. As many people have said, this has been a very welcoming and open group, so I appreciate that.
Thanks for that. You know, similar to, and I'm probably going to get her name wrong, but Savadni's comments about this question around billing capacity, right? Because that has come up over and over again. And again, is not directly the responsibility of the commission, but is an opportunity for the commission to engage in administration-wide priorities, which is to reform our delivery system to better respond to the needs of our diverse communities, right? So like, I'm hearing that, right? Like where those concrete opportunities lie for the commission to support that in support of our collective goals. So thank you for that. Stacy, please bring us home.
Thank you. Stacy Hiramoto again with Remco. Oh, I'm going to try to keep this condensed. Regarding data and doing standards, I have nothing against that, except I think we need to review that the commission really doesn't have authority over, as far as I know, very many things. And in fact, we kind of tried to explore this early on, and we got an earful from the counties. It's like, you're not the boss of us. So I think it would be good to have, I mean, it could be a part of the project to do a standard, but you know, if it just sits on the shelf because people don't look at it. So we need to put that into consideration. Yes, we used to have very much power in the PEI regs, but as far as I know, we are no longer in charge of those. I don't know. I haven't, but I wanted to say another thing, that although I believe communities of color and the LGBTQ communities are really under fire, I think that it bears mentioning that the consumers of California, the client community, is under fire as well. There are pieces of legislation going through the legislature that it would make it more easily to forcibly treat and voluntarily hold and put under conservatorship. And there are efforts to fight those bills, but I do feel that I just wanted to mention that. I think the other consumers just haven't had the chance to talk about that, but I'm happy that the commission has a legislative committee, because maybe you could take those up at the meeting. So the last thing I wanted to say is I think I'm more practically focused, and I think you were asking Chair Alvarez about how these committees would interact with the new committees, which I'm delighted. I am so delighted you have a program committee and the ledge committee, and I think that is a really, really forward and good beneficial step, especially since the commission is so huge now. I did want to bring up that I believe that these committees should have some kind of say or some kind of interaction to talk about things such as the bills, such as also the innovation project, which is huge. And I don't know how that would happen, whether you'd have a liaison or whether the committee would actually take some aspects of the innovation project partnership fund and take a look at that. But I think that that's important, that I think that these committees should look at the major aspects of what the commission does. And in that line, I want to bring up, and I promise I won't make a big stink, but I do want to make sure people on this committee know, because, and Michelle, you're not a guest, we're all guests, because nobody's a committee member yet. I think they're going to make some new committees, I think. So we're all, this is a very welcoming place, which is so refreshing and so wonderful. But in the committee, in the commission's bylaws, it says, they're talking about committees under section 6.1A2. Ideally, each standing committee shall have a maximum of 14 members and shall include public membership. Shall, okay, shall. Of this public membership, at least 2 shall be consumers, 2 shall be family members or caregivers of consumers, and at least 2 shall be members of the underserved ethnic and cultural communities. And public membership of each committee shall be selected by the chair, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, currently, the new committees do not have public members on them. And I have brought this up, but I don't like to always be a complainer, but I have brought it up at the committee, at the commission meetings. They haven't answered, but I think, you know, I'll give them time. But I think it's important that you guys know that right now they are in violation of their own bylaws, and they need to put people from the public on there. Now, some of those members of the consumers and family members and people from cultural communities, because of the commission's new membership, they may already fulfill that and think that that fulfills those requirements. But I think we should know who's fulfilling those requirements. But I hope that that's addressed in the future. But I do think, again, my main point though was that I think these committees should have influence in some way on what is going on with the commission's big projects. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Stacy. Always appreciate your constructive feedback. It's a process, a learning process. So I appreciate you being with us. Thanks everybody for that conversation. You know, Stacy, to your last question, that's a legal question. So I would defer to Sandra on that. And if not at this meeting, then at our commission meeting to talk more about, oh, Sandra can.
Yeah, I can, absolutely. I've addressed this with Stacy, and I believe I did email you back, Stacy, but we are forming our advisory committees under rules of procedure 6.1 structure B, so not A, section B, which states that the commission may establish any multi-member body, a committee, a subcommittee, or a task force consisting of commissioners appointed by the chair as necessary to support the work of the commission. So we're not doing it under A. Our advisory committees are formed under B, although I do agree with you that our rules of procedure do need to have like a cleanup so that we can make it clear and distinguish, you know, the A committees from the B committees, but that is the legal authority. And I do believe I have responded to you, but I can dig up the email for you, Stacy, but it is under section B of the rules of procedure, not section A.
We appreciate that clarification, Sandra. And I think regardless if it's A or if it's B, I think what is reading between the lines, what matters is that meaningful public input in these discussions, right? In the program committee, in the legislative and external affairs committee, the budget committee. And again, to the conversation we've had today, in whatever structure we have moving forward, to incorporate the voice of our community members, of our diverse community members, of our client and family members. And I don't think, again, I don't want to point to a regulation or a law. That's absolutely something that can reinforce it, but it's also in the activities and practices that we put in place that really help make those laws and policies come alive, right? It's one thing to have words on paper, it's another to really act that out. And that's what this conversation is helping ensure we do more effectively moving forward. So thank you for that. And we have received this feedback. And we're not done yet, and we will move forward in carefully considering it as we think through our next steps. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to my partner in crime, Commissioner Chambers, to help wrap us up.
Yeah, making good trouble, good trouble. And I know I've got to wrap it up because I'm long-winded, and I appreciate each and every one of y'all for being on this call. But I really want to just move to agenda item 5, the closing. We just have a couple minutes, 1 minute, 2 minutes, on any last insights that you all have, if you hadn't had the opportunity to share today. If there's anything else that we haven't asked or we should be thinking about, either you can say it right now, send us an email. You know we're going to respond or try to respond. We were one of the most responsive, and we actually care. So I'll leave like 30 seconds, 10 seconds right now. If anyone has any last thoughts before I say my last words. Because, is there any hands? No? Okay. So once again, thank you for sharing your thoughts. I heard each and every one of you all, and I need you to know that the chair is an advocate, and I am a wild advocate to making sure that the voices of our consumers and family members and our cultural and linguistic communities are heard. As the next step, the commission staff will review all the feedback that was shared today and develop a roadmap for the future of the Client and Family Leadership Committee and the Cultural and Linguistic Competency Committee. We will share that draft with you for further input and engagement, and we're looking forward to continuing our work. And you're heard loud and clear. And you have the two one. I mean, I know there's other commissioners on this call, the folks that stayed, but you have some of the two biggest advocates in California in our great state that have y'all back. So this is not falling on deaf ears. And even, I mean, the deaf ears are amazing, but it is not falling on, you're heard. And I'll move it to the next item, 6. Chair Alvarez. I think you're on mute.
So sorry. Thank you so much. Well, that wraps us up. Again, we are very grateful for you being here with us today. And not only today, but in this bigger fight to improve the well-being of everybody who calls California home. And with that, I will adjourn our joint meeting. Thanks again for your time, your commitment, and your insights. Take care of yourselves.